Men are moved by two levers only: fear and self-interest. Napoleon Bonaparte, they tell you liars can't look you in the eye. That's a comfortable lie, a safety blanket woven for the naive. The truth is, the best deceivers hold your gaze, mastering the art of appearing sincere. We are not them. We see the subtle tells, the micro-expressions flickering across the face like shadows, the carefully constructed narratives built on foundations of falsehood. This isn't about spotting blatant lies. It's about dissecting the subtle manipulations, the half-truths, the carefully crafted image designed to control your perception. They want you to believe lying is obvious. They want you to trust their manufactured sincerity. But trust is a vulnerability, a chink in your armor that they will exploit without hesitation. We provide the tools to see through the smoke and mirrors, to recognize the subtle shifts in body language, the carefully chosen words designed to plant seeds of doubt or manipulate your emotions. The world is a stage, and everyone is playing a role. But some roles are designed to deceive, to manipulate, to control. Learn to identify the players, understand their motives, and protect yourself from their games. Their deception relies on your ignorance. Our knowledge is your defense. Deception is not merely about uttering falsehoods. It's about constructing a reality, an alternate narrative that serves a specific purpose. It's a calculated manipulation of perception, a deliberate attempt to control the thoughts and actions of others. Think of it as architecture, where the truth is buried beneath layers of carefully constructed lies, half-truths, and strategic omissions. The goal isn't just to mislead. It's to build a prison of false beliefs within the target's mind, trapping them in a world of the deceiver's making. The psychology of deception is a complex tapestry woven with threads of insecurity, ambition, and the primal need for control. Often, the deceiver is driven by a deep-seated fear of exposure, a belief that their true self is unacceptable or unworthy of love and respect. They construct a false persona, a carefully curated image designed to elicit admiration and trust, shielding their vulnerability from the world. This manufactured identity becomes their armor, their shield against judgment and rejection. But maintaining this facade requires constant vigilance, a relentless effort to control every word, every gesture, every micro-expression. This is the burden of the deceiver, the price they pay for their carefully constructed lie. They are trapped in a performance, forever bound to the role they have created. The skilled deceiver understands the power of emotional manipulation, the ability to exploit vulnerabilities and manipulate feelings to achieve their desired outcome. They know how to play on your fears, your insecurities, your desires, crafting narratives that resonate with your deepest emotions. They become master puppeteers, pulling the strings of your heart, guiding your actions with invisible threads. Empathy, often seen as a virtue, becomes a weapon in their hands, allowing them to understand your weaknesses and exploit them with ruthless precision. The ability to feign sincerity is paramount. They become masters of mirroring, subtly mimicking your body language, your tone of voice, your emotional expressions, creating a false sense of connection and rapport. This fosters trust, making you more susceptible to their manipulations. The deceiver understands that people are more likely to believe someone they perceive as similar to themselves. They become chameleons, adapting their behavior to blend seamlessly into your world, gaining your confidence and disarming your defenses. They study you, analyze you, learning your triggers, your biases, your vulnerabilities. They use this knowledge to craft their deceptions, tailoring their lies to your specific weaknesses, making them almost impossible to detect. This is not simply about telling a lie. It's about crafting a psychological profile and exploiting it for personal gain. Furthermore, the deceiver often employs techniques of deflection and gaslighting to maintain control of the narrative. When confronted with inconsistencies or contradictions, they skillfully divert attention, shifting the blame onto others or twisting the truth to fit their agenda. Gaslighting, a particularly insidious form of manipulation, involves systematically eroding the target's sense of reality, making them doubt their own sanity and perception. The deceiver subtly undermines their confidence, questioning their memories, their judgments, their beliefs, until they become completely dependent on the deceiver for validation. This creates a power imbalance, giving the deceiver absolute control over the target's thoughts and actions. The target becomes a puppet, dancing to the deceiver's tune, completely unaware of the strings that bind them. The more sophisticated the deception, the more subtle the manipulation. It's not about grand pronouncements or blatant lies. It's about the accumulation of small, seemingly insignificant distortions of the truth, carefully woven together to create a tapestry of deceit. They use ambiguity as a weapon, leaving room for interpretation, allowing you to fill in the gaps with your own assumptions. They plant seeds of doubt, sow discord, and watch as the target's relationships crumble around them. They are masters of divide and conquer, turning friends against each other, isolating their victims and solidifying their control. The deceiver thrives in secrecy, operating in the shadows, concealing their true motives and intentions. They cultivate a network of enablers, individuals who are either complicit in their deception or simply too naive to see through their facade. These enablers become unwitting accomplices, spreading their lies, defending their actions, and reinforcing their false narratives. Breaking free from the grip of a deceiver requires a profound understanding of these psychological tactics, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, and the courage to reclaim your own reality. The first step is awareness, recognizing the signs of manipulation, identifying the patterns of deception, and understanding the motives behind the lies. Only then can you begin to dismantle the carefully constructed facade and expose the truth that lies beneath. This is a battle for your mind, a struggle to reclaim your perception, and a fight to protect yourself from the insidious forces of deception. Imagine this: a seemingly successful executive, let's call him Mark, charming and charismatic on the surface, but underneath, a master manipulator. He's built his career on a foundation of lies, deceit, and calculated betrayals, carefully crafting an image of competence and trustworthiness that masks his true nature. Mark understands that the key to successful deception is not about telling grand, outlandish lies. It's about the subtle art of omission, distortion, and strategic half-truths. He excels at presenting himself as the victim, even when he's the perpetrator, skillfully shifting blame and responsibility onto others. When a project fails due to his incompetence, he's quick to point the finger at his subordinates, highlighting their supposed shortcomings while conveniently omitting his own missteps. He cultivates a culture of fear and intimidation, creating an environment where no one dares to question his authority or challenge his decisions. Mark is a master of triangulation, pitting his employees against each other, fostering rivalries and distrust, and ensuring that no one can form a united front against him. He exploits their insecurities, preys on their vulnerabilities, and uses their ambitions against them, dangling the promise of promotions and rewards while simultaneously undermining their confidence and self-worth. He understands that people are often motivated by a desire for recognition and approval, and he uses this knowledge to manipulate their behavior and control their actions. Mark is also adept at using flattery and charm to disarm his targets, showering them with compliments and praise while subtly extracting information and manipulating their perceptions. He builds rapport by mirroring their behavior, mimicking their body language and echoing their sentiments, creating a false sense of connection and trust. Once he has gained their confidence, he begins to subtly plant seeds of doubt, questioning their judgment, undermining their ideas, and gradually eroding their self-esteem. He understands that the most effective way to control someone is to make them question their own sanity, to make them believe that they are imagining things, that they are being paranoid, or that they are simply not good enough. Mark is a master of gaslighting, a psychological tactic that involves distorting reality to make someone question their own perceptions and memories. He denies their experiences, dismisses their feelings, and twists their words, leaving them feeling confused, disoriented, and increasingly dependent on him for validation. He may even go so far as to fabricate evidence, manipulate events, or outright lie to further his agenda, always maintaining an air of innocence and plausible deniability. Mark is a master of plausible deniability. He ensures there's always a buffer, a layer of insulation between him and the direct act of manipulation. He never gives direct orders that could be traced back to him. Instead, he uses subtle suggestions, ambiguous language, and carefully worded requests to achieve his desired outcome, ensuring that he can always deny any wrongdoing if his actions are ever questioned. He uses phrases like, "It would be great if," or "Have you considered?" to plant ideas in people's minds, allowing them to take the fall if things go wrong. He is careful to document everything, creating a paper trail that supports his version of events while conveniently omitting any evidence of his manipulative behavior. Mark understands that perception is everything, and he invests a great deal of time and effort in managing his public image, cultivating a reputation for competence, integrity, and leadership. He is active in industry associations, attends networking events, and cultivates relationships with influential people who can vouch for his character and credibility. He uses these connections to advance his career, secure lucrative deals, and shield himself from scrutiny. Mark also understands the power of silence, and he uses it strategically to create uncertainty, anxiety, and dependence in others. He withholds information, delays responses, and refuses to commit to decisions, leaving his subordinates in a state of constant suspense and anticipation. This allows him to maintain control, manipulate deadlines, and extract concessions from others. He knows that people are uncomfortable with ambiguity, and he exploits this discomfort to his advantage. He may also use the silent treatment as a form of punishment, ignoring or stonewalling those who have crossed him, sending a clear message that their behavior is unacceptable. This can be incredibly damaging to their self-esteem and can lead them to question their own worth. Mark is a master of emotional blackmail, using guilt, threats, and manipulation to control the behavior of others. He preys on their fears, insecurities, and sense of obligation, exploiting their vulnerabilities to get what he wants. He may threaten to reveal their secrets, damage their reputations, or withhold their support if they don't comply with his demands. He may also use guilt trips, making them feel responsible for his happiness or well-being, and implying that they are selfish or uncaring if they don't do what he asks. This type of manipulation can be incredibly damaging to relationships and can leave victims feeling trapped and helpless. Mark understands that people are often more willing to believe what they want to believe, and he exploits this tendency by tailoring his message to his audience. He uses confirmation bias to his advantage, presenting information that confirms their existing beliefs while ignoring or downplaying any contradictory evidence. He may also use framing techniques to influence their perceptions, presenting the same information in different ways to elicit different responses. For example, he might describe a cost-cutting measure as streamlining operations to make it sound more positive, or as laying off employees to make it sound more negative, depending on the desired outcome. Mark is a master of impression management, carefully crafting his appearance, demeanor, and communication style to create a desired effect. He understands that people are quick to make judgments based on first impressions, and he uses this knowledge to his advantage. He dresses impeccably, maintains a confident posture, and speaks with authority, projecting an image of competence and success. He is also adept at reading social cues and adapting his behavior to fit the situation, chameleon-like, blending in with any environment and ingratiating himself with any audience. His goal is to create a persona that is both likable and credible, someone that people will trust and respect, even if they don't know him very well. This careful construction of his identity is a crucial component of his manipulative strategy, allowing him to deceive and control others with greater ease. The cumulative effect of Mark's manipulative tactics is devastating. Over time, his victims become isolated, demoralized, and stripped of their self-confidence. They may suffer from anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems, struggling to understand what is happening to them and feeling powerless to stop it. They may lose their jobs, their friends, and their families, becoming completely dependent on Mark for validation and support. This is precisely what he wants, as it gives him even greater control over their lives. Mark thrives on the suffering of others, feeding his own ego and sense of power with their pain and humiliation. He is a predator, a parasite, and a master of deception, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. The tragedy of manipulation lies not only in the deceiver's skill, but in the inherent vulnerabilities of the deceived. Weakness, in this context, isn't a moral failing but a strategic disadvantage, a set of predictable patterns that predators exploit. The first and perhaps most crippling vulnerability is the need for validation. Most individuals crave approval and acceptance, a desire rooted in our social nature. The manipulator expertly targets this need, offering carefully crafted praise and attention to create a sense of dependence. This isn't genuine affection, but a calculated investment, a hook baited with fleeting moments of warmth. The victim, starved for genuine connection, readily accepts this counterfeit affection, failing to recognize the ulterior motives behind the seemingly generous gestures. Coupled with the need for validation is a susceptibility to flattery. While genuine appreciation is a cornerstone of healthy relationships, excessive or insincere praise should raise red flags. The manipulator, however, uses flattery as a weapon, inflating the victim's ego and creating a sense of indebtedness. This isn't about building genuine self-esteem, but about creating a fog of illusion that obscures reality. The victim, basking in the glow of undeserved compliments, becomes less likely to question the manipulator's motives, accepting their pronouncements and suggestions without critical scrutiny. This creates a dangerous imbalance of power, where the manipulator's words carry undue weight. Another significant vulnerability is a lack of self-awareness. Individuals who struggle to understand their own emotions, motivations, and patterns of behavior are particularly susceptible to manipulation. They are less likely to recognize when they are being taken advantage of, and more likely to fall prey to the manipulator's psychological games. This lack of self-awareness can stem from various sources, including childhood trauma, low self-esteem, or a simple lack of experience in navigating complex social situations. The manipulator exploits this blind spot, subtly undermining the victim's confidence and eroding their sense of self. Empathy, while a valuable human trait, can also be a vulnerability in the hands of a skilled manipulator. Empathetic individuals are naturally inclined to trust others and give them the benefit of the doubt. The manipulator exploits this tendency, presenting themselves as vulnerable or in need of help, triggering the victim's compassionate instincts. The victim, driven by a desire to alleviate suffering, may go to great lengths to assist the manipulator, often at their own expense. This isn't about genuine altruism, but about exploiting the victim's empathy for personal gain. The manipulator feigns distress, weaving tales of woe to garner sympathy and control. Furthermore, a fear of conflict can render individuals vulnerable to manipulation. Many people avoid confrontation at all costs, prioritizing harmony and avoiding any potential for discord. The manipulator preys on this fear, knowing that the victim will be reluctant to challenge their behavior or assert their own needs. This allows the manipulator to operate with impunity, pushing boundaries and exploiting the victim's unwillingness to engage in conflict. The victim, fearing the consequences of confrontation, remains silent and submissive, allowing the manipulation to continue unchecked. This creates a cycle of abuse, where the manipulator's power grows with each act of unchallenged aggression. The inability to set boundaries is another critical weakness. Boundaries are essential for maintaining healthy relationships and protecting oneself from exploitation. Individuals who struggle to set and enforce boundaries are often taken advantage of by manipulators. They may feel obligated to say yes to requests, even when they are uncomfortable or unreasonable. This stems from a fear of disappointing others, a desire to be liked, or a lack of confidence in their own worth. The manipulator exploits this weakness, constantly pushing the boundaries and demanding more from the victim. The victim, unable to assert their own needs, becomes increasingly resentful and depleted, their energy and resources drained by the manipulator's insatiable demands. Finally, a lack of critical thinking skills can make individuals vulnerable to deceptive tactics. Manipulators often rely on logical fallacies, emotional appeals, and other forms of misinformation to persuade their victims. Individuals who lack critical thinking skills may be unable to recognize these tactics and may be easily swayed by the manipulator's arguments. They may accept information at face value without questioning its validity or considering alternative perspectives. The manipulator exploits this lack of critical thinking, planting seeds of doubt and distorting reality to achieve their desired outcome. The victim, unable to discern truth from falsehood, becomes increasingly confused and disoriented, losing their ability to make informed decisions. These vulnerabilities, when combined, create a perfect storm for manipulation. The manipulator, like a skilled chess player, analyzes their opponent's weaknesses and exploits them with ruthless precision. Understanding these vulnerabilities is the first step in defending oneself against manipulation and reclaiming control over one's life. Recognizing these patterns is crucial, for once a weakness is understood, it can be fortified, transforming a potential point of exploitation into a source of strength. The Machiavellian approach to understanding human deception goes beyond simply identifying vulnerabilities. It's about recognizing the strategic calculation inherent in the act of manipulation itself. Think of the manipulator not as a purely impulsive actor, but as a strategist carefully assessing costs, benefits, and probabilities. Their deceit is not random, it's targeted, designed to achieve a specific objective with minimal risk. This involves a deep understanding of human psychology, not necessarily in a clinical sense, but in a practical, applied manner. The manipulator understands what motivates people, what their fears are, and what buttons to push to elicit a desired response. They are students of human nature, constantly observing and analyzing the behavior of those around them, seeking out weaknesses and opportunities. A key element of the Machiavellian strategy is the art of impression management. The manipulator understands that perception is reality, and they meticulously cultivate an image that inspires trust, admiration, or even fear, depending on their goals. This might involve carefully crafting their appearance, their words, and their actions to project a particular persona. They might feign empathy and understanding to gain the trust of their target, or they might project an aura of authority and competence to intimidate them into compliance. The goal is to create a favorable impression that disarms the target and makes them more susceptible to influence. This calculated performance is often subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's a crucial part of the manipulator's overall strategy. Another critical aspect of the Machiavellian approach is the use of calculated emotional manipulation. The manipulator understands that emotions can cloud judgment and make people more vulnerable to suggestion. They might use guilt, fear, or even love to control their target's behavior. For example, they might use guilt tripping to pressure someone into doing something they don't want to do, or they might use fear-mongering to create a sense of urgency and panic, forcing their target to make hasty decisions. They might even feign affection and admiration to gain their target's trust and loyalty, only to exploit them later. This emotional manipulation is often subtle and insidious, slowly eroding the target's sense of self-worth and independence. Furthermore, the Machiavellian manipulator is adept at creating and exploiting social dynamics to their advantage. They understand the power of social pressure and the desire to conform, and they use these forces to manipulate their target's behavior. They might isolate their target from their support network, making them more dependent on the manipulator. They might spread rumors and gossip to damage their target's reputation, making them more vulnerable to social exclusion. They might create alliances and coalitions to exert pressure on their target, forcing them to comply with their demands. This social manipulation is often covert and indirect, but it can be incredibly effective in controlling the target's behavior. The Machiavellian strategy also involves a careful assessment of risk and reward. The manipulator is not reckless. They carefully weigh the potential benefits of their actions against the potential consequences. They are constantly evaluating their target's reactions, adjusting their tactics as needed. They understand that manipulation is a delicate game, and they are careful not to push their target too far, lest they risk exposure. They are also aware of the potential consequences of getting caught, and they take steps to minimize their risk. This might involve using plausible deniability, scapegoating others, or simply lying to cover their tracks. The goal is to achieve their desired outcome with minimal risk to themselves. Deception itself is multifaceted. The manipulator understands that outright lies are often less effective than subtle distortions of the truth. They might use half-truths, exaggerations, or omissions to mislead their target without explicitly lying. They might also use ambiguity and vagueness to create confusion and uncertainty, making it difficult for their target to discern the truth. This allows them to maintain a degree of deniability, even when their lies are suspected. They might also use subtle forms of deception, such as feigned ignorance or feigned incompetence, to lower their target's guard and make them more susceptible to manipulation. The key is to create a false impression without resorting to blatant falsehoods. The long game is important. The Machiavellian manipulator is patient and willing to play the long game. They understand that manipulation is often a process, not a one-time event. They might start by building trust and rapport with their target, slowly gaining influence over them. They might then begin to subtly manipulate their target's behavior, gradually increasing their demands. They are willing to invest time and effort into the relationship, knowing that the rewards will be greater in the long run. This patient approach allows them to slowly erode their target's resistance, making them increasingly vulnerable to manipulation. Ultimately, the Machiavellian approach to understanding human deception is about recognizing the strategic calculation and the underlying power dynamics at play. It's about seeing the manipulator not as a simply dishonest individual, but as a skilled strategist who is carefully analyzing their target's vulnerabilities and exploiting them to achieve their own goals. By understanding this strategic framework, we can begin to develop effective strategies for defending ourselves against manipulation and reclaiming control